Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Over the next few minutes, we are going to explore something that affects every single decision you make, every relationship you have, and every goal you pursue yourself concept. We often study psychology as something external, how to read others, how to influence behavior, but today we turn inward. Because before we enhance our personal effectiveness or emotional well being, we need to understand the lens through which we see ourselves. So, I am Dr. M. Bhuvaneshwari, Assistant Professor from Department of Civil Engineering, SRM Institute of Science and Technology. I am here to discuss about behavioral psychology with you now. Well, what is psychology? Let's start with the basics. The word psychology comes from two Greek roots. Psychology has two uh, different words, that is, psych meaning soul and logos meaning study. So, originally it was the study of soul, but psychology broke away from philosophy and physiology only about a century ago to become its own science. Today, we define it simply: psychology is the science of human and animal behavior, not just thoughts, not just feelings, behavior, because behavior is what we can observe, measure, and ultimately change. Well, psychology is very vast. We have educational psychology, developmental psychology, social psychology, clinical psychology, health psychology, but today our focus is mainly on behavioral psychology. Behavioral psychology looks at how our environment shapes our behavior. It asks, how do we learn new skills? How do we form habits? And most importantly, how can we reshape our behavior? Think about it. When health workers introduce a new sanitation practice in a community, they don't start with the unknown. They start with what people already know and build from there. That's behavioral psychology in action. So, shaping behavior through rewards and consequences. What is the origin of behavioral psychology? First, John B. Watson in the year 1913 made a radical proposal. Psychologists should stop trying to study invisible minds, what Freud was doing, and focus on what we can actually see: behavior. If you can't observe it, you can't scientifically study it. That was his argument. Then came B.F. Skinner, who took this further. Skinner believed that all human behavior is shaped by environment. We act in certain ways not because of some inner mystery, but because of the consequences of our previous actions, rewards, etc. So, reward a behavior, it increases. Punish it, it decreases. Simple, powerful, and deeply relevant to how we see ourselves. Confidence of self. Now let's go to the heart of today's topic. In 1890, the famous psychologist William James introduced something profound. He talked about the me, what he called the empirical self. James said an individual's me is the sum total of all the he can call his, not only his body and his psychic powers, but his clothes, his house, his wife and children, his ancestors, and friends, his reputation, and works, his properties, and his bank account. Notice how the broad this is. How broad Notice how broad this is. James identified three layers: the material self, the social self, the spiritual self. Let's define self-concept more precisely. Different scholars have shaped our understanding. Roy Baumeister defined it as the individual's belief. Roy Baumeister defined it as the individual's belief about himself or herself, including the person's attributes and who and what the self is. Rosenberg said it's the totality of an individual's thoughts and feelings having reference to himself as an object. And Carl Rogers, one of the most influential humanistic psychologists, broke it into three core concepts: self image, self worth, and ideal self. The gap between your self image and your ideal self. That gap is where much of our emotional tension lives. Gordon Allport in 1955 gave us another beautiful framework he called the self, the proprium, the peculiarly mine. And I want you to think about which stage resonates with your current life: bodily self, self identity, self esteem, self extension, self image, rational coping, appropriate striving. Who are you? What makes you? Let me ask you directly, who are you? In psychology, we say that the self has an I that thinks and a me that is the content of those thoughts. Your self concept is that set of beliefs you hold about yourself, who you are, who you were, and who you will become. It is multidimensional: physical, psychological, and attitudinal, and it starts early in life. But here's the key: it goes through constant evaluation and adjustment through your entire lifespan. Key message for positive self concept. So, how do we build a positive self concept? Here's the central message I want you to take home today. The direction of the spiral can usually be changed by looking at the positive things in our lives and actuating them, while putting negative items in proper perspective, dealing with them one at a time. Some negatives simply cannot be changed and must be dealt with in other ways. Let me translate that: you have more control than you think. By making the choice to be pleasant, happy, and content, a parent can change the atmosphere of an entire household. A teenager's attitude can change how others treat them. And here's a hard truth that is also liberating: it is usually worth our time to stop and ask, would the negative ways others treat me have anything to do with how I present and treat myself? Who is ultimately responsible for the way we act? Each person is responsible for the way he or she acts. Now, it's not your parents, not your past, not your circumstances too. It's only you. Positive self-concept and negative self-concept. to the difference in internal dialogue. I can do anything I really want to do. I have definite strengths. I'm an okay person. I am as good as my friends. There are many ways to solve a problem. Versus now you have a negative inner voice. Why try? I could never do it. I am not nearly as good as my friends. I am boring. I cannot do anything right. Now, analyze yourself. Which voice is louder in your head? The goal isn't silence the negative entirely, that's impossible. The goal is to turn up the volume on the positive voice. So, retry telling the same, I can do anything I really want to do. I have definite strength and ability. I am okay. I am an okay person. I see myself as being as good as my friends. There are many ways to solve a problem. Some examples of positive self-confidence. A person sees herself or himself as an intelligent person. A man perceives himself or herself as an important member of his community. A woman sees himself or herself as an excellent spouse and friend. A person thinks of himself as a nurturing and caring person. A person views himself or herself as a hardworking and competent employee. And here's some example of negative self-concepts. A person sees herself as stupid and slow. A man perceives himself as a burden to the community. A woman sees a woman sees herself as a terrible spouse and friend. A person thinks of himself as an unapproachable person. A person views herself as a lazy and incompetent employee. Self-concept circle. The person I think I am. This is your self-perception. The person others think I am is how person others perceive you. The person others think I am. This is how you believe others see you. Now, coming to the self-concept circle, and it operates in a loop. As I see myself, my actions. As others see me, others' reactions to me. Back to how I see myself. This is why self-concept is so powerful. It's not just internal, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Here's a case study. Imagine a mother, 35 years old. She looks in the mirror and sees only flaws. Her first wrinkle, 3 grey hairs, 13 kgs she can't lose, a job she didn't want, a house that looks like a disaster, and a service project she can't fulfill. Now put her in the self-concept cycle. How does she see herself? Negative, right? How does she act? Stressed, withdrawn, irritable. How do others see her? Overwhelmed, maybe distant. How do they react? They give her space or they criticize. What does that do? It confirms her negative self view. The spiral continues unless someone interrupts, unless she interrupts it. So here's another case study of a teenage girl. So moving apart, self-concept reflection map. Now it's your turn. This slide is a reflection map. I want you to mentally fill this in or jot it down if you have paper. The person I think I am. How do my colleagues or students perceive me? What assumptions do they make about my self-perception? And most importantly, what is one? Why I can improve my self-concept? What can I change in my thinking or behavior? Think of one small, concrete change, not your life overall. One change. The 20 test statement test by Kuhn, which was framed in 1960. So this exercise asks you to look at how social affiliations help to shape our self-concept. Write down 20 different responses to the question, who am I? Don't worry about evaluating the logic or importance of your responses. Just write that they occur to you. Give yourself 5 minutes to complete this task. Now, let's score your responses. There are 4 categories. A mode, a mode, physical characteristics. I am tall, I am tired, I am a resident of this place or that place. This is your skin deep self based on appearance and surface traits. Next mode, B mode, social roles and relationships. I am a college student, I am a son, I am an engineer. This is your institutional self linked to groups, obligations, and future orientations. C mode, personal traits and emotions. I am happy, I am talented, I am fashionable. This is your impulsive self, focused on individual satisfaction and present orientation. And the final one is the D mode, abstract or existential. I am alive, I am part of the universe, harder to categorize, often indicates a more psychological or uncertain sense of self. Interpreting your scores. Here's what your total means. If you had mostly A mode responses, your self-concept is rooted in appearance, how you look to others. Mostly B mode, you define yourself through groups and roles. You accept obligations you feel linked to others. And if it is C mode, you prioritize individual satisfaction and present experiences. You may feel group obligations inhibit your expressions. And finally, the D mode, you may feel your sense of self is harder to pin down, more abstract, more existential. None of these are good or bad. They are data, and data gives us power to grow. Today, we have traveled from origins of psychology to the depths of our own concept, self-concept. We have seen that who we are is not fixed. It is shaped, it is chosen, and it can be reshaped at any point of time. Remember, William James, yourself is the sum of all you can call yours, but it is also who you choose to become. Thank you for being here.